Hi, folks. Well, this is Talk TV. Max Whitehead here, and I've got a very special guest today. Yep, a member of Parliament. Yep, the opposition leader for small business. This is Andrew Bailey. I call him the leader for small businesses. I reckon that's how you fit. How about it, Andrew?
Well, it's got a nice ring about Max, but I'm just merely one of many in the National Party, one of the cogs.
Well, you're a very special one because we want somebody. We're from small business. I don't know if you know this. I'm the CEO of the Small Business Voice, but we're looking for an MP that will support us and back us. Are you the man?
Well, I think we're starting to build up a bit of a history, Max, of supporting small business. Hey, they're the backbone of New Zealand, and people don't realise they employ most of the people. They create most of the economic wealth. That's why we've got to look after them and not let them die, because when they do, actually a whole lot of people get made redundant, and that's even worse.
And look, we're the most productive sector of our community. And of course, 97% of all enterprises are small businesses. And that's where we're missing out, Andrew. And that's where year upon year, we hear lots and lots of promises, even from you guys at National. And look, when it comes to the crunch, nothing happens. Can you change that?
That's a hard thing. Last year we came out with a rental support package for small business owners suffering from the lockdown. We talked about lost carryback for 4 years. We talked about voucher systems to support our hard-hit tourism industries. We talked about changing bylaws so that people could have al fresco dining on the footpaths, so that if they're restricted by room, all those types of things. That's the innovative stuff that we came up with. Guess what the government's done this year? Zippity zip, apart from a poorly designed financial package.
Well, Andrew, look, you're very brave saying this because you're in opposition and you don't have to put this in place. Can you swear to us that if you got power, all those policies were put into place? Can you say that? Because do you have the caucus, the ability for your leader to stand up and saying, I support everything Andrew says?
Hey, well, in a year and a half's time, September, if we're not through all this and we haven't opened up the borders, and by doing that, then a lot of these problems go away. If we haven't got to that stage, we're in a much more serious issue than what you're talking about now. We've got to open up the borders. We're 92% vaccinated, and we've got to help domestic travel, but we're also going to allow international travel. And if the whole world's moving down that route, so obviously we just need to get it over this Omicron, but it's not going to take until the end of next year to get to that point, or we're really in trouble, Max.
You're performing like an MP. You haven't answered the question. So let me ask
what
you
I'm trying to say to you,
will it be National's policy at the election, and will you carry it through when elected in?
Okay. If it's exactly ceteris paribus, which means exactly the same situation exists in 18 months' time, then a lot of the stuff we've talked about we will definitely implement. But we shouldn't be in that position. We just got to try and get through this situation we find ourselves in now. We're now 22 months into it. And, the lack of rats testing or even having the kits available and all that sort of stuff, that's the type of stuff we must be put in place over the next 18 months, Max, or we really are in trouble. I'm not trying to avoid the question. We will do what's appropriate.
The thing is, our small business people are just untrusting at the moment of anybody because our government are really turning on us. And look, you're our last gain of hope. So I don't want to alienate you. We need you. But the other thing is you've put up an idea of loans for small business. Right now, if we got another virus, is there any money for small businesses so they can carry it on like the Australians did?
Hey, well, I think, look, Grant Robertson's come out with this financial support package. I've got a couple of criticisms. One is that he's miles too slow in doing it. Everyone knew during January that sort of appalling time. No one was traveling on the roads. You can just look at it and see for yourself. So it's taken all this time to come up with this design of this package. And then he says you've got to base it 40% drop on the 6 weeks up to 15th of February. Well, that's the worst time anyway. I've just been in conference calls with the Restaurant Association today, etc. They're all saying this is the maddest scheme. And what he should have done is put in place a similar scheme what he did previously, but do it quickly, move on, allow people to plan. Exactly. But you don't always have to come up with a financial package. This is what I was saying before. Lost carryback, they did it for 1 year. We wanted to extend it to 4 years. It doesn't actually cost the government anything. But what it would allow a small business person who's in trouble is to take the loss this year and offset it against previous year's profits. And therefore, end up getting a cash refund.
Well, the thing that we saw in Australia was there was a bit of cash put in the hands of businesses to carry them on through. What we saw in New Zealand is a little bit of that. The 40% is a hell of a hill to climb right now, particularly in that difficult period of time. Yeah. And so, well, it's not real. And it's the other thing, it's up for abuse. Some businesses could abuse it because a lot of businesses might say to the accreditor, "Hey, hold off paying that for another 7 days, and then we'll get all the bonuses from the treasury."
Oh, I think that as the chances of that have been minimised. And the Auditor General did a review of the scheme. He came up with some recommendations. MB are working through it. I think the chances of that are fewer and fewer. I think the real issue is the baseline that they've adopted, this 6 weeks up to 15th Feb. That is what everyone is saying. Look, all you've done is made it really hard for people. But as I said, there's a whole lot of non-financial aspects that the government could have done. Like,
the government have done a lot, Andrew. Sorry to interrupt you, but the government have done a lot. The increase in the minimum wage. What would you guys do about that?
Hey, look, in principle, we're not against increasing the minimum wage. When we're in power, we basically increase it 50 cents every year.
Yes.
But the reason we want people to earn more money, but the thing is, we did it in blocks that everyone knew every year that was going to come into force 1st of April, whenever it does, and so people could plan for it, right? What this government's done over the last 4 years is had this massive increases trying to get to this so-called living wage. And look, as an aspiration, that's really good, but when you've got 22 months of lockdown and most small businesses really struggling, and it's not just the minimum wage that goes up, it's all the other wages go up. So, you can cost out your minimum wage and go, oh, that's great. But actually, everyone's employee costs have gone up. And all they're doing, when you do that at a time when many businesses are struggling, we estimate that they've imposed about 3 billion of additional costs on small businesses. This is the government. And over the past 4 years, that is a phenomenal cost. And the trouble with this government, they just assume every business owner, like a landlord, are rich, and therefore they're good for it. And it's easy for the government to impose those costs on them, not for the government to pick up.
Let me hit you with another one. What are you going to do about this additional public holiday? What would you do about that? Would you put a stop to it, or would you let it proceed, or would you select another public holiday to be dropped off? What would the National do?
I don't know. Obviously, it's bolted down. It's not something we've really had a detailed chat about, but obviously that's just been another cost put on employers, the time and a half and then the day on lieu and all that sort of stuff. I don't know whether we'd remove it or not. It's not something that caucus has really discussed.
All right, but that's a fair look. I like your honesty, because you're saying the minimum wage would continue. You're not sure about the public holiday and where you sit with that. Look, there's one more big one that's really gets into my world, and it sits, and I do employment law, is the fair pay issue, which is looming. And that is frightening to me, because I was around in the 70s. I know you're far too young for that, young fella, but in the 70s, there was just hell to play over that. And look, they're going to reintroduce that. Where does National sit with the fair pay issue?
Oh, we're horrified. Absolutely horrified. So I've just sent out some information today to people on it. So a lot of people don't realize it's coming down the track like a steamroller. But actually a fast steamroller, because what it means, and you, as you say, you're an employment lawyer, Max, but basically what it means is return the good old days where a union sits down with the largest player in the industry and it hammers out an agreement with that wealthier or more established employer, and then that award, or that agreement, but a union award, or employment award scheme, is then applied across the entire sector, that entire industry. So what it does is removes flexibility in the way you want to hire and engage with your staff. Some people want to be part-time, some want to be full-time, some want to be paid in cash, some want more days in lieu. All that flexibility goes because you've got centralized bargaining undertaken and agreed between the biggest employer. And then the worst thing about this agreement is that also, under this arrangement, it takes very few people within your workforce to actually move to a situation where the business is mandatorily required to have a.
So the good news from you, Andrew, is that you guys would knock it back. You'd vote against it, and I'm very
absolutely
really to hear that.
Absolutely.
Now, one more. There's another factor right here which hurts us as businesses right now, because they want businesses who may be struggling and have to make people redundant to pay a redundancy insurance on top of all that cost and pay for it, so the workers can have a payment and make the workers pay. What do you think about that? Would you guys vote for that, or would you vote against it?
No, this is, we're going to vote against it. And again, we looked at this issue last year. I got someone to run some numbers on it. And as you know, but I'm just repeating for the audience, that the proposed scheme that Grant Robertson's proudly announced is that there'll be 80%. The employer has to pay the first 4 weeks if someone is made redundant. And then there's a further 5 months. So it's a 6-month total scheme where that person is paid 80% of their wage at the time that they were made redundant. And on the so-called basis that they could retrain or find a new job or whatever. And one of the interesting things they've said is people have to look for work. Well, one of the absurd things the government's done this last year, to great fanfare, is that they removed the requirement for people on job seeker benefit, which is another word for unemployment benefit, to have to seek work. And that's what, so on one side, last year they removed it, and this new scheme, apparently they're going to reimpose it. Well, that doesn't match up. And we've got 190,000 people unemployed at the moment on job seeker benefit when we've got 3.2% unemployment. Basically, we've got about 40,000 people that have gone on the benefits since the first lockdown 22 months ago, and they've got no incentive to go back to work, even though businesses are crying out. So, you know, this scheme's a really expensive scheme. It's about over $3 billion worth. It's even more generous than anyone anticipated. And it's another tax on small businesses, because guess who's going to have to pay it? Well, the employer is going to make a contribution, and also the employee.
I know that must upset employees, particularly now. They've probably gone through hardship. You know, in Auckland here, I believe a lot of business had 4 months of lockdown. They got their employees to help them out through that, and they took pay cuts. So, you know, employers have got it tough. Their workers, they love them dearly and want to keep them. They've actually gone through sacrifices as well, and for that to be loaded against them. Now, look, the big elephant in the room, Mr. Bailey.
Another one.
Take a deep breath for this one. Are you ready for this? Okay. It's the protesters. Why haven't you gone down to talk to them?
I have.
Tell us more.
Yeah, as a MP, I've walked around. I haven't been through the middle of the protest, but, you know, I've had to go in and out to go to different functions, whatever. And, you know, I've been approached by a number of my constituents who I've seen there or have rung me up. So on a personal level, as a local MP, if a local constituent rings me up and wants to have a chat about it, or I see them, of course I'm going to talk to them. But you'll
be in for a growling from the Prime Minister. Does that terrify you?
Well, no, it's not that I'm walking through the crowd, and the Prime Minister can think what she likes. But if people approach me, and particularly as constituents, I'll tell you what, I'm going to meet them, and there's no way anyone's going to tell me not to.
Well, from a small business perspective, Andrew, and I guess you know that because some of your constituents are there, but there's a lot of small business people there being bust broke and completely ruined, and they're sitting in that crowd as well. We know there's some rat bags in there, but certainly there's some really good people as well.
Yeah, the thing has morphed a little bit. When it first started, there was obviously pretty disparate groups, and there were security issues and people that's been well canvassed. But, you know, where it's morphed to now is more protests about overtly and over government intervention in people's lives. And I think one of the things, whilst we always want protests to be peaceful, and I think that's a really important aspect, the other fundamental principle we need to have in New Zealand is that people have the right to protest. And the last thing I'd like to see is that people are not allowed to protest because it's uncomfortable for the government. That's a really bad outcome. And some of the actions that have been taken, many in the House don't agree with what's been taken. So, you know, people have a right. There's always a balance about it. But I would say to you about the protest movement, it's actually pretty hard to work out who the leaders are. And I think that was demonstrated by someone went on Mike Hosking's show last Thursday. And then it was sort of transpired that he wasn't viewed as the spokesperson for the protest agreement. So it's actually quite hard to get your hands around who is the leader or are the leaders. And that's one of the issues why many of us haven't actually been able to gauge. And I know if there was a clarity around that, I think there would be much more inclination to actually engage with them.
Good one and good answer. I'm quite heartened to hear that. Andrew, look, we've got to wait as the public. Some of us are really fizzing here because we're just absolutely upset and there's more and more pain to come. What we want is a change of government. What can we do as people to actually expedite that change? Is there anything we can do except wait for the next election?
Well, that's a real invitation, isn't it? Hey, well, the first thing is when September 23, party vote national, because that's the best thing. Don't ever party vote anyone else. But in the meantime, I think we just need to make sure that we're keeping the issues in front of the government. We are as MPs, but actually business people and people like yourself, Max, have a role to play on that. And then just support at a local level if you or spokespeople who can help get things in the media or whatever. And I think we've got to be fair, not everything that the government's done is wrong. They have done some good stuff, but in the main, it's what is amazing, and I think the protests show it very clearly, is that increasingly people are concerned about the direction, particularly with the overt government influence or interference in people's lives. And I think people just want to be left to get on. It's the same with business people. We want to let you get on with it and succeed and hire and take on more people and take a risk and be supportive along that road with you, because it's a difficult road for anyone.
Andrew, I don't know, I'm hearing rumours that there are some people, some members of Parliament from the Labor Party who are prepared almost to walk across the floor. Now, that would be huge. And of course, there's the waka jumping legislation, which would have them expelled from their
the old
party.
Winston Peters waka jumping to stop people getting out of control in his party.
Well, it didn't do him a lot of good. He's out of Parliament right now, but he's looking hard to try and come back by the sound of it. But
dreadful
back to
legislation.
Is it possible? Is it possible to get somebody to walk across the House? A few of them to do that. Would there be numbers there to do that?
I don't know. And I'm not quite sure what the rumor you're talking about in respect of which piece of legislation, or are you just saying about the protests, or I don't know what you're referring to.
No, there's some Labor MPs who haven't been heard. They're not consulted. They're sitting on the fringes and they're not very happy. And I hear that they're even thinking about, why am I even here? I'm embarrassed because my constituents are not getting the representation I promised them.
Yeah, well, that's the world of politics, particularly for backbenchers. And the reality, Max, is the polls are showing a bit of a swing towards us. That inevitably means that there are fewer Labor MPs, and a lot of those are first-term MPs. So there must be 10 to 15 right now Labor MPs looking across the House thinking whether I've got a job in 18 months' time, and increasingly it's looking unlikely. But, we've just got to get on and do our bit as National Party, do a good job. We've got further improvements to make, but we need to make sure our position is clear and people understand what we're trying to push and want to do if we did come into power in 23.
Now, look, I've got to congratulate you on a swing. It's getting stronger and stronger. And, you've got another leader, which is in there, Mr. Luxon. We've got to mention his name. Do you think the building of the strength of the party is because of Andrew Bailey, or is it because of, what's his name again? Mr. Luxton. Who's the most charismatic person in the party is drawing all the new attention?
Oh, it's no doubt Christopher's had a huge impact.
Very modest answer.
He's had a huge impact, and it's good. Just repositioning the party. We want to be clearer with our messages, and we're trying to do that, and just be more accountable as MPs. We all got to do our bit. It's not one person, and obviously the leader has a very important role, but we all need to be sharing the load and need to be out there doing our bit and making sure people understand what we want to do in our portfolios.
All right. Is there a message you want to put out there for small business? Here's your opportunity, Mr. Bailey, because we want to support you, but tell us what we can do for you.
Yeah, look, I understand, and we as a party understand what you're going through right now. Not all businesses are struggling, but the ones that are, we really understand that, particularly because you can't get bank funding on a business now. It's very difficult. So many people have had to rely on gearing up their houses. So their mortgage is much bigger now. Interest rates are going up. We saw the Reserve Bank push up the interest rate 0.25% today. It's a hard time, and the cost of living for New Zealanders all around, whether you're a business owner or you're an employee, is just rampantly going up with inflation just under 6%. So, look, the biggest thing we're going to have to do, apart from the economic challenge, is trying to get it back so that a Kiwi family who work hard can get ahead, and obviously, that could involve how you change structural issues of the economy, and also may involve other aspects. There's tax and benefits issues that we can look at, but we just need to make it so that Kiwis can get ahead and look after their families and have a home. That's the other major thing. We've got huge housing issues, and we literally, it's all great. We've got lots of consents, but gee, I've got so many builders who are struggling right now with the supply chain and all those sort of things. And the costs have now gone from 2,500 per square meter to 3,500. The cost is huge. We have got some significant structural issues, but National's up for it. We know what the issues are. We're working through, and by the time we get to 23, we'll know what we're going to do. We're not going to have a whole lot of wonderful working parties trying to tell us what to do.
Andrew, just a little bit longer, but there's certainly the building industry is a big one, and I'm pleased you brought that up. They are really copping it at the moment. What is behind all this? Because, I mean, you're obviously in the know in regards to the finances. What really is behind the building industry's doom and gloom at the moment?
Well, it's a mixture of things. Obviously, there's supply issues. So someone I was talking to about Jib today, he said he can't even place an order for Jib until June. And then it'll be a question if he can place it in June when he gets his Jib. It won't be available in June. That's when he can first next place his order. So that's holding up his building of his house. But also, all the other products coming overseas and shipping. And there's an element of that is international, but it's not all international. We didn't allow manufacturers to work during the lockdown, or very few of them. And then the other major issue is the labor. So, we haven't allowed tradespeople to come in from overseas because it's got these weird rules around MIQ and all that sort of stuff. Then you've just got the pressure of a huge building boom. Interesting, the government's chosen to start competing with the building industry right at the time when it's the busiest time ever. Actually, the time for government intervention is when the building industry goes flat. That's when government should be building, not during the biggest boom. But they're doing it because they're so far behind their building programs. But, all that's putting more competition and pressure into the building industry. And it's evident now, Mates in Construction, which is a mental health organisation for the 280,000 people involved in the building industry, have just come out with a survey late last week saying 43% of builders have had some form of mental health issue, and let's call it what it is.
That's frightening, isn't it? That really is
frightening, right? And it's the highest sector for mental health issues, higher than agriculture, which is the next highest. And it's just that combination of pressure, and then you've got consenting issues, it's just a raft of stuff carrying through. And, if you're trying to deliver a good product to a person at a particular price, if you've got a locked-in price and you've seen your building costs go up by 20, 30, 40%, then who's going to wear the cost?
Andrew, just to touch on another one, I'd love to do some research on small business, and it's pretty hard to get data on that, but their mental illness. But the big factor is right now we're hitting by Omicron. There's one question that comes to mind. I've got to go, but I mean, I'd really love to hear your answer on this. Is that the doubling of the sick leave is going to hurt businesses dramatically when all their staff finally go off. So there's 10 days. That's another extra week's pay they're going to have to give those staff if they're hit with Omicron. That would National even consider, if it was in power today, suspending that bloody extra 5 days sick day just to help employers to get through that?
Yeah, well, look, it's interesting. I think we'll look at the evidence, but anecdotally, when I've been talking to business owners recently, not those in trouble, by the way, a number of them are saying that some employees, and I'm not saying all of them, but some employees are taking advantage of the 10-day opportunity, so increase from 5 to 10. It's something we'll look at the stats on. Again, we haven't come to a policy decision on it, but we were not supportive of it at the time it was passed or ran through the House by a majority government. So, in principle, we didn't support it. weird look at the what the stats were showing. But we're going to have to make some changes, because we want to create an environment where employers want to take on employees. And right now, exactly. I used to employ 150 people. Gee, I'm glad I don't have anyone now. Yeah. I only have a couple of people in Parliament, basically. And it's just the difficulty of employing people now. And this is the other thing. We've got a big package around. We want to incentivize businesses to invest in productive plant and equipment to try and help alleviate those labor issues by replacing them with good quality, high quality, brand new machines, and redeploy labor into more high value jobs in those businesses.
Well, I'll tell you what, Andrew, I want to hear more about that. So how about coming back and doing a show just on that? Because I think there's just great value for small businesses. And if you've got a package for that, that's something that's going to be worthwhile.
Max, it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
And you, my friend. And look, congratulations. I pumped you pretty hard today, but you've come up trumps. So good on you. And that's nothing to do with the American ex-president anyway, but good luck. Thanks very much, Andrew. See you next time.
Cheers for it. Bye-bye.